Hello, welcome to this next session on REBO Reflects. This is Niels Bosma. I'm Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship at the Utrecht University School of Economics. And we also have Erik Stam, who is the Professor of Entrepreneurship at the Utrecht School of Economics. So today we're going to reflect on Corona, but relate this especially to entrepreneurship. Erik, maybe you can kick off this discussion, and what do you see around you when it comes to entrepreneurial responses to Corona?
Yeah, so we've seen an enormous freeze of the economy, which I think is unprecedented. And of course, this has as a primary reason to flatten the curve of the Corona virus, which in itself is mainly dealing with the health and well-being of the population, but it has severe, let's say, constraints for businesses because they see their turnover fall in some sectors completely, while their costs are running, which means that they are getting into severe liquidity problems, and which, if they are not getting help from banks or are going to revamp the business model, or if they don't have buffers, means that they are going to go bankrupt soon. That's not what we see yet, but probably going to happen very soon. What we already see is that a lot of people that would normally think and start a new business are not doing this. So we've seen a drop of more than a third of the number of startups in the last month already. So people are confronted with severe uncertainty. And also scale-ups, so the firms that have been growing very fast over the last years are hit disproportionately because they have a very thin financial basis, because they are running and they are not saving money to build up their buffers. So we see that especially startups and scale-ups are hit the hardest, and that is not without consequence, because these two types of businesses are normally seen as the drivers of economic development. So startups and scale-ups are probably hit the hardest, but these are also the type of firms that we need the most for long-term economic development. So the economy is hit as hard, I would say, or perhaps even harder than the well-being. Even you cannot probably not disentangle those, because these are very strongly related. But yes, especially the groups that we need the hardest are hit the hardest as well.
Yeah, interesting, because this is also something that we actually observed about 10 years ago when we had the financial crisis. I'm involved in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is a study that compares entrepreneurial activity and intentions across the globe annually. So what we saw back then was indeed that in many countries, people were postponing the startup of new businesses. And in some countries, this actually was repaired quicker than in other countries. So I think it's really indeed important that the economy is resilient, that you can actually allow startups to continue and entering the market. So this is an important issue. But we also saw very different patterns at the same time across countries. So the postponing of startups was a general pattern, but you also saw in some countries that actually at the same side there was also an increase in the number of startups, and this was especially from people who lost their jobs. So they were actually forced out of the labor market, and they had no other option than starting a business. And obviously this has to do also with the context of the country, right? If you have quite a good social welfare provision in place, unemployment benefits, then we see these responses less than in other countries. So, for example, in Scandinavian countries and in the Netherlands, this necessity entrepreneurship was quite limited. But in other countries like in Greece, Spain, and also the United States, we actually saw a lot of necessity entrepreneurship increasing. And well, we might also expect similar effects with this crisis. So it will be interesting to see also with this study that we are doing what the effects will be. So these are indeed negative effects, but we saw also cases of entrepreneurs who actually saw opportunities in the crisis. So they actually came up with new business models and really linked to the consequences of the crisis. And I think that's interesting because we also see that with our students, for example, right? We see some nice examples of students who set up new initiatives to help children with their homeschooling. Or with students actually who are looking for new housemates. How can you actually accommodate this with digital tools. So these are examples of immediate reactions we see actually also from our young talents, and I think that's also interesting. So we're very curious what kind of new business models we will see. So maybe Erik, you can also say something about that.
Yeah, notwithstanding the wide-ranging, devastating effects of the crisis on health, but especially also on the economy, we also see people acting entrepreneurially to deal with this new reality, and transitions that have been waiting to happen over the past decade are now seeing an opportunity to really make an impact and to accelerate. So in general, the societal value of businesses and of opportunities have become more prominent. So health, education has become higher on the agenda, and not only of people, but of businesses as well. We see a huge digital transformation. So a lot of people, especially policymakers and also managers, have been complaining about the slow digital transformation in large parts of business life. Well, you can see this happening everywhere now, and perhaps more quickly than over the past 10 years. Also, we see a transition towards more opportunities in health and sustainability. And last but not least, also a lot of creativity for new sources of alternative finance. So in a sense, you can also say never waste a good crisis. This is a time, especially I think in the second phase on the longer run, that transitions can accelerate and can lead to an improved economy.
Yeah, and do you think we also need new regulations then for making transformations happen to more societal relevant entrepreneurship?
Yeah, first of all, it is of course consumers themselves that need to steer the investments of entrepreneurs. That is, I think, the basic essence of entrepreneurship and seeing opportunities and creating value and fulfilling the needs of users. But the governments, if they step in, they also need to think wisely of how to accelerate structural change that is also for the greater good of us all.
Yeah, so these will be interesting times ahead of us, and I would say then also that requires real collaboration between European countries in particular to make this happen.
It requires European collaboration. It requires collaboration between science and policy, science and business. I think there will be much more mutual and collaborative modes to get out of this crisis in a very healthy way, and also a sustainable economy that is better than the past, but then there needs to be a lot of entrepreneurship to create this future. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a nice conclusion to our discussion. We've hit the 6 minutes limit, I think. So it was nice talking about this, and for sure this discussion will be continued.